What's up, Lazy Dog fam? I hope everybody out there is having a marvelous day. I'm going to try to squeeze this video in between rain showers. Sprinkling a little bit now. Not supposed to really start raining until in the morning, so maybe we can get this in. I want to show you on potatoes, talk about those a little bit, and then I got a neat little trick on a try for our English peas. Now looky there. I believe this is the best looking potato crop I have ever grown. Now we'll just have to see what we get come harvest time in a few weeks to a month or so for some of these varieties. But the plants are looking jam up. We got 7 different varieties here. So we got some red potatoes on that end, red Norland Viking. This is a cobbler potato. We've got Kennebec, Yukon Gold here, a fingerling potato, and then 2 rows of these butterball potatoes here. And when we planted these, we planted them kind of in order of how they will mature. So those ones on that far in should be ready to dig first, and then we'll just kind of work our way along here. We got the mid-maturing varieties in the middle, and then the later maturing varieties on this end. We've got some blooms forming on some of these. These are the cobbler potatoes. We can see couple blooms there. Those are the only ones I see right now. And it's interesting to look how the leaf and growth structure differs from one variety to the next. So these early maturing varieties are pretty short. They're not very tall, they're just kind of short and bushy. But as we get on over here to these mid to later maturing varieties, the plants are a lot taller. As you can see there, those fingerlings and Yukon Golds are pretty daggum tall. Now, if you know anything about growing potatoes, you know they like to be healed or like soil mounded up around the plants. These right here I have healed twice. So I healed them one time when they were really small, once the whole row kind of filled in and I can throw some soil on them without covering up any of the plants. And then I took a big hoe and came in here and pulled a significant amount of dirt up to the side of these plants a second time. So we got them healed about a foot tall. Probably woulda, coulda, shoulda healed them one more time, but they just started growing so fast, and so I didn't really get a chance to. And now it'd be kind of difficult to reach over the sides of them and pull more dirt to them. And I'm kind of running out of soil in between the rows. We planted these on a 4-foot spacing, but kind of running out of soil to pull to these plants. So this is all we're going to heal them, and we should just be, you know, should be just fine like this. Some of these earlier maturing varieties, like these red potatoes here, what you would call determinate varieties. Some people say you don't need to heal them at all. And there is something to that. We like to heal them because it helps with our weed suppression along the row there. And it also keeps any of our potatoes from being exposed to the sun. If potatoes get exposed to the sun, they turn green. We don't want green potatoes, right? So throwing soil to them kind of helps that from happening, especially if we were to get, you know, a lot of rain, a big monsoon or something. That could wash away a lot of this soil and expose those potatoes if they weren't healed. But the healing process kind of protects us on that. Now, I hope I don't jinx myself when I say this, but another interesting thing about my potato crop this year is that I've had hardly any insect pressure at all. I have sprayed these one time when they were really, really small. I noticed a little bit of chewing or gnawing on those leaves, so I sprayed them with some pyrethrin. But since then, I haven't sprayed them with anything, and I can't find any insect damage anywhere along here. So these guys really haven't required hardly any maintenance at all, besides just an occasional splash with the overhead sprinkler if it got really, really hot and dry, and the healing. But man, it's been amazing how haven't had to spray them. Usually we have to spray them with a fungicide and insecticide every couple of weeks, but haven't had any issues. Also haven't had to fertilize them hardly any. We put down some complete fertilizer pre-plant, and then I injected some fish emulsion through my tripod sprinkler there one time, and that's it. I haven't fed them, you know, any more than that. So just, it's been amazing to me how we've got these potatoes, good looking plants, without much effort. So that got me thinking, what did I do different this year as opposed to previous years that resulted in these nice looking potato plants with hardly any pest pressure. And the only thing I can figure out is it's got to be something to do with that mustard cover crop we had planted here before these potatoes. Now I can't prove that because I don't have a plot with potatoes planted where there wasn't a mustard cover crop to compare this to, but that's the only thing I can think of. This is the first time I've planted potatoes behind a mustard cover crop, and that's my best guess. So I'm gonna keep doing that, assuming we get a good harvest here. And I think that may have really helped them. Yeah, that mustard does have some pest deterring qualities to it once you till it into the soil there, and we tarped it afterwards. So mustard before potatoes is definitely something I'm taking note of to do in future years. Now, one more thing I want to mention about potatoes has to do with these later maturing varieties, what some people would call indeterminate potatoes. Now, I don't really like that terminology because they're not indeterminate everywhere. It's not like a clear distinction you have between determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. With potatoes, it's a little different. So if you live somewhere where the summer's kind of mild, yes, these later maturing varieties will kind of keep growing and growing. And you might have seen videos of people doing these things called potato towers, where they start with this tub and they don't put much soil in it except the bottom. They plant the potato, and then as these things grow, they just keep putting soil around it and more soil around it. And when it eventually comes harvest time, they dump the whole thing out and they've got this long string of potatoes. And yes, some of these later maturing varieties, the butterball, the fingerlings, will do that if you live somewhere where you don't have a real extreme summer. All these guys right here are going to succumb to the heat come late May down here. So they're not really indeterminate for us, but they may be for some people. So if you're wanting to try the potato tower idea and you're searching for indeterminate potatoes with not much luck, just look for later maturing varieties. Look for varieties that have a maturity date, 110 days or more, as opposed to those red potatoes, which are going to mature in 90 days. We planted all these early March, late February, early March. So here we are. We've been through March. We're about halfway through April. So we're about halfway there until we'll be harvesting the red ones. These guys will be further behind that. So that's the big difference between indeterminate and determinate potatoes is just the maturity date. All right, so that's enough about the potatoes. Now let's talk about these English peas. So in this plot here where I've taken some stuff out as it has matured or bolted, we have two double rows actually, of these English peas. And when I planted these, I planted them a little later than I would have wanted to, and they may end up dying if the heat gets real bad. But hopefully we'll have, we'll keep some semblance of cool weather, and these guys will hang on for a decent harvest or two. So we planted on both sides of that trellis right there, and we got a good stand of peas. They're just starting to climb that trellis a little bit there. For some reason, I always have trouble getting my English peas to climb my trellis. Doesn't matter what kind of trellis I'm using, whether it's cattle panels, hog panels, or this netting here. I always have issues with those plants kind of finding the trellis initially and really starting to climb vertically up the trellis. Now if we look right here, we can see some of them have found the trellis pretty well, have attached to it with those tendrils, and looks like they'll end up climbing up it just fine. But then we got some of these here that are kind of slouched over and doesn't look like they're ever going to find this trellis. Now we can come in here and try to train these guys up the trellis, but these pea stems here are pretty tender and they break really easily. So it's not like a cucumber or a gourd that you can train pretty easily. We can get them close here, but just like we see this guy right here, they break pretty easily. So I was trying to figure out a way to get these guys to start climbing this better than they are. So the other day I was on Instagram just browsing around different gardening pages, and there was this lady on there, and I wish I could remember her name because I definitely want to give her credit for the idea. But she was growing peas alongside of a fence in her backyard. So a little different, but kind of the same concept. And she had some of this netting, and it was ran vertically up the fence, kind of right off the side of the fence. And she wanted to get those peas so they would climb that netting and wouldn't just fall back like you've seen ours do here. So although the gardening space and the application is a little bit different, I think what she did is going to work really well for us. So let me go get a few supplies and let's give it a try. So the tools we're going to need for this little quick project today include 2 stobs. My stob of choice is going to be these 2-foot pieces of rebar. We need a hammer and we need a box of twine. And what we're going to try to do here is run a low line of twine alongside these pea plants to get them snugged up against that trellis, get them back upright so they can start climbing that thing. Now, we could tie our string to that T-post there we have on each end, but it's going to be tough to get it wrapped around there tight, considering we've got that netting right there. So that's why we're going to use some additional stobs on the end so we can get this nice and tight. So I'm going to put my stob right here in line with this T-post, kind of in between these 2 rows here. Now I want to make sure I don't puncture any drip tape doing this, so let me feel around there and make sure there's no drip tape down there. Summers, I think we're good. So let's put it right here. Let's get her in the ground good. And we're going to be pulling this string pretty tight. So I'm going to hammer this down pretty good. That ought to hold it. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, and I'd hammer in the evening. I'd hammer all day. I'm going to get this one in right here. Now that we got our stobs in, let's run some string or some twine. And I only want to tie this off here just a few inches above the ground. We need to come back and run another line later. We still got plenty of stob here to work with. So I'm going to tie this off. And if you're doing this, you probably want to use a poly twine like this. It's not going to stretch. I don't think a cotton twine would work very good because it's going to stretch. You need something you can pull nice and tight. So what we're going to do is just kind of scoot along the row here. I'm going to slip this twine underneath these plants and push them up against that trellis there. Now we're at the end of the row here. I'm going to pull this thing really tight, kind of contain everything. We're going to wrap it around here. I'm going to go ahead and tie it off. I guess you could keep running around the other side, but my box of twine's way back there and I got to go get it. Now if I do that, I'm going to lose my tension here. So we'll just tie it off and start us another line for the other side. Uh-oh, I was afraid of that happening there. Let's try this again. All right. One side down, one to go. And there we go. Now I could be wrong, but I believe that's going to work a lot better. Sure looks a lot better. And those things should start taking to that netting and climbing up it a lot better now that they're a lot closer to it. Now I know some folks will say, well, I plant my peas on a single row, then hang the trellis directly on top of it. And that probably does work better than what I originally did here. Since we're growing a double row, we had some that didn't want to get on the trellis, get on board with climbing the trellis. So hopefully this little string here pushing them closer will help. Now one more slight modification that I'm going to make that she didn't do, but my row's longer. And I'm just going to do it on this side where they're lean back a little further. Was I'm going to just put me another stob right here and kind of pinch it in just a little more. And that should be good there. And that allows us to kind of raise it up a little bit if we need to. And we still got plenty of stub there. We could run another line if we wanted to. Or I guess if you wanted to in the beginning, you could put another stub in the middle here and wrap around it as you go. But I think this right here is going to hold them in just fine. All right. So hopefully that little trick on our English peas works. If it doesn't work, it only took us about 5 minutes and a couple stubs and some string. We really haven't lost anything. But I think it's going to work pretty well. Let me know if you've ever tried anything like this, or if you got any other good tips and tricks for getting your English peas to climb. And I'd also like to hear how your potatoes are doing, assuming you planted some potatoes. Has this been a better than normal potato year for you so far? Hopefully I'm not the only one who's having good results. So let me know how yours are looking. Maybe some of you are getting ready to harvest. Maybe some of you still got a ways to go like we do. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, all that good stuff. And we'll see you right here next time on the Lazy Dog Farm channel. When it rains, it pours.